Welcome to the Elastos monthly podcast. We have Benjamin from the Essentials team, Ryan, Fakhul, and myself, Greg, from the Elastos growth team. I also help out with Filder, a lending protocol, and with the secretariat, and with myriad other elements of Web3. We're going to look at the Essentials wallet and DIDs. Benjamin, could you please introduce yourself?
So I'm the team leader of the Essentials wallet. So I'm doing team management and I'm also the lead developer.
I'm Fakhul, part of the Elastos growth team, also on the Cyber Republic DAO, which is the Elastos Community Council, and also CEO of the ecosystem project, Credo.
And finally, Ryan.
Hi, I'm Ryan. I'm also part of the Elastos growth team, and have also serve on the council and participate in some other activities within Elastos in terms of DeFi and other good stuff.
Benjamin's here from Essentials Wallet. So let's ask the question, what is a Web3 wallet?
I guess there are many definitions of Web3, but mine would be that Web3 wallet is an application that allows users to do different kind of things without the requirement to use a specific third party. So you can manage your funds. You can manage your identity, you can manage your storage, but you can choose the provider you want for all those services, contrary to the Web2 architecture where you always depend on a provider like Google or Facebook.
I see the wallet as a way of accessing all of the DeFi and NFT and on-chain activities when you are in control of your own assets. It's not a case of handing them over to a CEX. You have the keys, you have control of what you're doing with your money and with your digital assets. In terms of compatibility, the Essentials wallet supports Elastos, the main chain, and subsequent side chains. What other chains are supported or can be supported by Essentials, Ben?
We have lots of EVMs built in, the most famous ones, but we also have a Bitcoin, and recently we've added Tron.
Can I access a EVM chain that isn't on the predefined list?
You can add any custom EVM. More advanced features if you use the built-in networks.
What's available as a built-in feature?
Mostly we get more token prices. So yeah, this is something we don't always have for ERC20 tokens for every chain, but for built-in EVMs we have the prices.
Okay. So as both a Web3 multi-chain wallet and an Elastos wallet, what are the features that are specific to Elastos?
We have a big focus on DIDs. So as soon as you start using Essentials, you get a DID. You can use the same mnemonic as your wallet to import your DID. So you can use only one mnemonic and have your crypto wallet plus your DID. Your DID means that we manage your private key to create credentials or to import credentials that have been created by other apps. We store those credentials into Essentials, and then we provide those credentials to the apps that need to use them. So we are a kind of intermediate storage solution for identity documents. Besides the IDs, we have other services like voting for the Elastos ecosystem. We can also manage suggestions, proposals for the Elastos DAO, Cyber Republic. We have a red packet service. So anyone can create red packets with native coins or ERC20 tokens. and share some links to airdrop tokens to their community. We are also a tool for the Elastos Hive storage, because in order to let applications access storage using Hive, they need to authenticate, and this is they do that using Essentials.
This Hive storage, what is it that the wallet holders can store in their Hive storage at the moment?
So applications can store quite a lot of things, including files and database entries. Users can choose Hive node. It can be a commercial Hive node, but it can also be their own node that they store at home. Every application that uses the Elastos technology will automatically store users' data on those Hive nodes. So the application data will always be stored on users' chosen storage locations. The data is not saved on the application servers. The asset attached to your NFT, the picture or the video, can be stored on your Hive node.
Okay, so yeah, the ownership is secured by the chain, and the file is stored on Hive. Am I close?
Yeah.
Okay, cool. I happen to know that there are widgets available on Essentials as well. How is it the widgets can be used?
So this is something we have added recently. We wanted to give more flexibility for users to customize their environment, because Web3 users use the wallet quite often, several times per day. They can change the theme, black, white, but also more exotic colors like red, pink, green. But they can also reorganize widgets. So every part of the home screen in Essentials is a widget, and you can choose which ones you want to see and in which order. So you have 3 sub-screens, a little bit like, on Android, you can swipe left, right on your home screen to add more applications. So on Essentials, you can do that. You can decide to put on your main screen the widgets that you use more often. So what kind of widgets do we have? We have your active wallet or the active network. If you switch networks very often, you can have a widget to switch networks in one click. Or if you use the apps quite a lot, you can have your favorite apps right in front of you. Or if you prefer to vote for Elastos DAO, you can just put this widget on the main screen.
Are there any adverts on the wallet? I've seen that on other wallets there are quite a lot of adverts kind of littering the place.
No, nothing like that.
A pure experience. Cool.
I think personally, as someone that has used Essentials for a while, and actually it's my only wallet, what I find interesting is I personally think it's more than just a wallet. And I think wallet as a term is bad enough as it is. But, if I think of Metamask, all I can do with Metamask is to sign a transaction. That's it, right? Whether I'm using the desktop version or the mobile version. When I think of Essentials, though, I think, wow, there's so much more I can do that is more reflective of what a true Web3 vision is. You've got the identity side, you've got the storage side, you've got the different widgets, the ability to vote on proposals, and more importantly, I can access other dApps within Essentials. So for me, it's a decentralized self-custodial solution for me to operate within the Web3 environment. So for me, that's really cool. And also the barrier to entry is really low. But I know Ryan, he's much more of a aficionado in this space, and I'm sure he's got many wallets. I guess I'll be quite interested to hear, what is it that you like about Essentials versus other wallets that are out there?
Yeah, I think some of the main advantages are the ability to manage multiple DIDs and multiple wallets really at the same time, to be able to like switch back and forth between wallets that are like specifically designed for different purposes with like a nice interface. Because you can do that in MetaMask, of course. You could just like import a private key and then label it on MetaMask. But I find the Essentials sort of workflow kind of nice in that respect. And then some of the other things are like the ability to sort of like load an in-app browser to view different applications on different chains and that kind of thing. So, and then of course there's some built-in like Elastos specific features that are useful with respect to like the ability to like manage the delegated proof of stake, voting, registering, validators, that all that kind of good stuff, which is really pretty essential.
I love the fact that by default, as part of installing Essentials, you get a wallet and a DID. So it's almost future-proofing the journey. But I guess, Ben, from your perspective, like, what was the vision behind it? Because there's so many features. What's the grander vision of Essentials? Or what is it that you're trying to achieve with all these different features, especially the DID component? Where did that all start?
The DID was part of the Elastos definition. So this was our mission as the core tool of Elastos to bring those identities to reality. And since the beginning of DID, so we have tried different kind of DID wallets. There were a few because DID was still quite experimental 2 years ago. And what we have tried to do is to connect Essentials right at the beginning with the apps that would use DIDs. So because if you have a wallet that manages DIDs, you need apps that produce information and you need apps that consume information. So we have tried to build this in the Elastos ecosystem, not only sign some kind of data just to prove that it works, that you can sign with your identity. It's not only that, we provided the SDKs to let the apps generate content. We provided the SDKs to communicate between the apps and the wallet, to store the information, and also the SDKs to deliver, to query, to let applications request. I want a name, I want passport information, and then we have screens to let users choose what kind of information they want to share, to which the app, and then the information is sent remotely. So all of that I haven't seen really with the same user experience in other identity wallets. So we have tried to balance the R&D aspect of the IDs with a good user experience.
It will be one of the winners of, as I call it, the wallet wars, because it has the DID, it goes cross-chain, so as more and more projects are looking for DID solutions, regardless of what chain it is, they're going to need a wallet that can support it. So yeah, I'm excited, but thank you.
All right, so I'm going to just rewind a second and ask about DID. What does it stand for? What is it for? Who can get one? Just let's start with, what is a DID?
Big topic. DID is a decentralized identity, but the concept of decentralized identity is also not always very clear, or it has different definitions in the Web3 community. For many users, your Web3 identity is actually just your Ethereum address, but it's more than that actually, and it's actually very different than that. The IDs are not really related to blockchains, at least not as much as DeFi applications are. The IDs have public keys, private keys, like your crypto wallet, but they can produce and store a lot of data that belong to you off-chain. So you can store a lot of information directly in the wallet and with nothing on-chain. The only part that is on-chain, or that could be on-chain, is your DID public key. So to let others verify your identity document. For example, if you share a credential, which is an identity document, to someone else, and he wants to make sure that this credential really belongs to you, so he needs to find your DID public key somewhere on chain to verify the signature. So this is pretty much the only reason why we need blockchains to store part of DIDs.
For me, that's starting to actually sound like this is a wallet that's actually holding something. For the longest time, I've always been a little bit thrown by Web3 wallets being described as wallets, because I was always under the impression, and I'm pretty certain I'm correct, is that there are no assets kept in my wallet. My wallet is merely a conduit, a way to access the blockchain where the assets are actually stored. It is just it is a key, it is a way through. Talking about identity being stored in the wallet, that makes sense, because then I'm in control of that. I have that under my kind of under my control, under lock and key. And if I want to share that information with relevant parties, then I can publish it, and then they can verify that on the blockchain. Which blockchain are these credentials saved to?
So in the Elastos ecosystem, this is a chain named EID, stands for Elastos Identity. And this is actually a EVM chain, but it's a little bit specialized to store DID documents and credentials.
Okay, so a discrete chain for identity, keeping it out of the way of all of the DeFi and the NFT and the social fight, etc. We've mentioned verifiable credentials. How and what is a verifiable credential?
This is a block of data, you could say. For people who know more computer science a little bit more, we can say this is a JSON file. So this can be any text content, but the key point is that this small block of information is signed, and it embeds your DID signature. So you can transfer this information to anyone, and they can just make sure that this block of information was issued by someone for you, and there is no way to modify, to tamper with the content of this credential. So we split, for example, you can have your name, just your name, stored in a credential. You can have your passport information. You can have medical records. You can have your diploma, and each of those information is a different credential, so that you can share this information, only the information needed, to relevant parties. You don't have only one document that you need to share with all your information every time someone asks for it. You can just pick the information that you want to share and decide if someone asks you this information, decide exactly what you want to share.
Let's say I have to prove that I'm over 21. And I have uploaded I've added a credential, which is my passport, which shows my age, being 21 or higher. And is my passport now available to anyone who accesses my key?
No, of course not. The way to store the credentials and the format of those credentials is still to be defined more and more. But one experiment we have done with a web app named KYC.me was to work with a KYC third party that managed the user's identity document, like passport, and gave us the confirmation of users' identities. And based on that, we generated credentials. So in the end, in the credential, you have only the textual information. You don't have any passport picture or any sensitive document. With the IDs, the most important is that the applications or the persons who will request to use your credentials, they will see who has created the credentials, and it's up to them to decide if they want to trust the issuers of those credentials. For example, we had a third party named Passbase for verifying passport information. So anyone could request to get my credentials that were issued to me after verification by Passbase, but they can decide to trust Passbase or not as a verifier of my information. If they trust Passbase, then that's fine. They can use my credentials. But if they don't, maybe they will ask me to do a verification of my identity with another KYC company. So this will create a very flexible market for identities and for the IDs. It's really up to anyone to decide the information source they want to use.
That's why it's so interesting and powerful. You know, if you compare it to traditional identity, you know, you don't actually know where your identity is stored. Like, God knows where the government stores it, what they store on you. Theoretically, they could change it at any point in time, but you know, you're generally given some sort of identity card, a driver's license, whatever, and that's what you go around using to demonstrate who you are and that you meet certain hurdles, such as, you know, being over 21, as an example. I think flipping it and taking a Web3 approach is quite interesting, because you can still have the security and authority that you get in terms of, it isn't a case that, you know, tomorrow Ryan can issue a credential saying, yeah, Fakhul's over 21 and he's a citizen of the United States. That's not going to really mean anything, right? That's just Ryan saying it. He's not a proof of authority. Rather, it's, you know, it's still those trusted bodies that are issuing a credential against you. So theoretically, the DMV or you know, the local doctor's office or whatever you call it around your birth records. But what I find interesting is a lot of data is often gate-kept and it's very hard to access. And so when you as a user are trying to demonstrate who you are, you often need to overshare to be able to prove certain small details about you. So for example, if I want to demonstrate my age, I often have to use my driving license or my passport, but I'm showing so much more information than I need to maybe, you know, a store clerk. Taking this approach, you don't need to share anything other than the fact of saying, yes, I'm above this certain age. And I think the blockchain bit for me, where it's really interesting is that, you know, all the blockchain bit is really doing, and yes, it can be highly flexible. You could theoretically store certain personal information on chain, but you don't need to. It could literally just be like an identity, you know, a long string that says, yep, this is me, and a way for a third party to basically read your credential by, you know, the public ledger's almost acting as the third party. Say, yep, you know, this is Fakhul. This is the credential issued by, you know, a public body. I can match the two and demonstrate, yep, this person, you know, he's more than 21. So for me, that's why I really like the approach Elastos has taken, right? Because if you think about that, you play it through your head and you say, okay, this is the future. Let's say everyone's agreed. Now you need people to adopt it. Anyone that supports this new approach will have to integrate that solution. So you could end up integrating many, many different chains, many, many different solutions. The Elastos one is really interesting because it's saying, hey, look, we'll just build a blockchain that's entirely dedicated to DIDs. It's scalable, so it can support them for everyone. And, you know, it's secured by validators. It's not a multi-sig wallet. It's not very specific individuals. It can become as decentralized as you want it to. And the great thing is, if you just integrate, the EID chain, then you're good to go. So in my mind, if I was an app developer and I was trying to think strategically ahead, I would say, hey, if everyone just used the Elastos chain for identity, then I only need to integrate one solution into my app rather than many solutions. And I think that's really the purpose or the vision for the EID chain. And hopefully, as adoption occurs, then it just helps to reduce that friction point to enter this new, paradigm.
With verifiable credentials, is it fair to describe it as a ZK proof?
Not like cryptography, like in terms of cryptography, right? Because that's like a very specific set of tools that allow you to like prove that you cryptographically know something without actually seeing like what the underlying data is. What we're talking about is sort of similar in that, but we're relying on like a third-party service to actually be that verification service and not cryptography, right? So it's not math that is the verifier. In our case, it's like some service, right? Some trusted party.
In an anonymous world that we're currently very much so in terms of Web3, in order to bring in that real world identity, there is going to be a reliance on trusted third parties in order to get the identity on chain, but then keeping that anonymity whilst also having the security of a verified and trusted credential is an awkward river to cross. In order to have someone's identity and their age and their location and their education level and their criminal record or whatever these different things are, that can't be done without having access to databases maintained by those services. So this is kind of that best fit in order to bridge that gap.
Right. Yeah, it is sort of an unavoidable thing when you're starting to take like real world information and put that on chain, because you do need like an oracle of some sort. That's kind of what we're talking about, is essentially a service to act as that oracle. And there is like I don't know the full extent of it, but the DIDs do have a spec that should allow for the inclusion of like zero knowledge proofs. But the thing is, like, it needs to be some sort of set of data that is like easily already provable on like the blockchain or through some other medium that can actually then like be used to do like all the actual cryptographic stuff, as opposed to what we're talking about now. So
thank you so much. And I know I've just been battering you with questions and you've done fabulously. We're going to go for this kind of big question. How can the world move towards an industrial scale DID solution that allows for real, more seamless collaboration across Web3 ecosystems?
It's a difficult question, but to me, the way I imagine this is that we need to find a kind of big player, institution, a government of a small city, country, who could push users to use this DID technical solution. Because once DID is deployed to a large number of people, its advantages will appear very clearly and will solve lots of problems. But we need someone to deploy, to push people to use DIDs. This is more like a technical solution that will help solve problems, but a little bit like HTTP for internet, like a protocol. So it's someone that will be used a lot, that will be very useful. And every time some administration asks you to prove your residence, then you just share this information. Once you will have a few hundred thousands of users having wallets, DIDs, then you will probably see the business companies plug onto this initial user base and start using the IDs and build added value services that will start to make money. This is how I can imagine it.
In terms of a large entity such as a government or a business that is looking to identify or use identity to their benefit and to their customers' benefit and their clients' benefit, it takes bravery and a pioneering spirit in order to do that. Earlier, Fakhul and I talked about the idea of fragmented identity, where you could have a different identity wallet, or you could have a different DID on every single chain. That to me sounds fragmented. It sounds like I have to maintain all of these different credentials, or I have to maintain my same credentials but in multiple places. Can the Elastos identity chain, by being a separate blockchain, help reduce the fragmentation of identity in Web3?
Yeah. So, Greg, I think the answer is yes. And I'll tell you why. Because right now we live in a world of it being completely centralized, right? And I think we're crawling towards a decentralized future, but we're not suddenly going to go into being 100% decentralized tomorrow, right? And as soon as you peel back the cover on most Web3 products, projects, infrastructure, there's a centralized component, right? Think about it. Most validators are on like centralized cloud service providers. The RPC you use when using Metamask, a company owns that, as an example. So I think it's more about the journey as opposed to what's here and now. In my mind, the way I like to think about the potential of the EID chain is there will always be centralized providers that will need to verify certain parts of your data and issue a credential. For example, if your education example, you have to go to a university to get a degree, right? I can't suddenly, I'm going to pick on Ryan again. I can't go to, Ryan's house for a year, hang out, and then at the end of it, he gives me some sort of diploma. I have to go to university, and it is only that university that can give me the credential, right? The same thing, if I was born in a very specific hospital, it is that hospital or that local authority that, gives me my proof of birth or existence, whatever you want to call it. The same with the government, right? So I think that part of identity will always be centralized. For me, it's more about how you can use those different aspects of your identity for your personal benefit, and more so when you're interacting more online. So I don't necessarily mean just on chain, I mean online, in any sort of digital environment. And the key difference is when I'm interacting with a platform, let's say if I want to buy something, or if I want to stream a movie, or if I just want to do something like very basic, I shouldn't have to share too much of my information. I want to limit that as much as possible, right? Because they don't necessarily need my information, other than to, for me to overcome certain hurdles. So the way I like to think of the Elastos identity chain is, it's basically just a public portal to say, yep, this person is who he says he is, or yep, this person's credential is correct. Because that's what you're really doing, right? You're just moving from a centralized player that's already reviewed your credential that's been issued and then says, yep, this is Fakhul, to a public blockchain that no single person owns. Rather, it's validated by the community as a whole, so you can't overcome it. And for me, that's just one step of moving away from centralization to a decentralized world. And I actually think that's the best way to do it, because other DID providers out there, the way they describe it is, get your verifiable credentials, we'll store it all for you, and then you can take your identity wherever you want to go, and you can use it when you're interacting with different platforms, and those platforms won't be able to harvest your data. The problem though is that original platform that's collecting all your data and giving you your data information, they're a centralized entity. So for me, it's about trying to break down or remove the steps of centralization. And for me, having a public blockchain that isn't owned by any single person is a great start.
Thank you very much, everyone, actually, for talking about essentials and then walking down the DID road. It's winding, it's long, and it's stretching into the future. So let's see where Elastos Identity Chain can take us all.